Welcome to this JMC webinar, Reporting ESA Students for Iowa Non-Public Schools. This is a very important topic for our Iowa non-public schools in particular. My name's Jake Banskoy, and I do want to give a shout out to Greg Gilman. So he's unable to join us today, but Greg Gilman was the developer that created this this innovation for our non-public schools. And actually, I see Greg is popping in to join us right now. So Greg might provide some insight as to this innovation that he has created for us. So basically, to kind of get us kicked off here, at the start of this year, kind of a big deal in the state of Iowa was students receiving education savings accounts funds if they are attending a non-private or a non-public school in the state of Iowa. And with that, unbeknownst to most people involved, the state was going to require some data collection. And what they had for data collection and actually data sharing was basically a spreadsheet. And we have several non-public schools that we're looking for a solution to quickly and efficiently share some of the data, and a lot of this data that's collected in JMC already with the state efficiently. And Greg Gilman stepped up to the plate and I believe knocked it out of the park with this one. So we're going to kind of go through each of these pieces, and I'll let Greg chime in whenever he sees fit. So during this session, we will cover essential topics, including accurately marking students as ESA fund recipients, identifying and resolving common errors, and efficiently creating comprehensive ESA reports. This webinar is a must-attend for Iowa non-public schools that are seeking to streamline their reporting process and ensuring compliance with ESA regulations. So, like I mentioned before, we're going to take a high-level look at all of the elements, or many of the elements that are going to go into what the state is asking for, and then we'll show you specifically how to do some of these things in JMC. So if you have any questions along the way, please use that chat feature and we will answer as we go. So to start off, understanding the high level of ESA and how JMC can interact with some of those pieces. So keeping track of qualified non-public students that are eligible for Iowa's Education Savings Account program with JMC is very easy to do. So you can, it starts with easily maintaining attendance and enrollment records, designating students as receiving ESA funds, and that will allow you to generate a CSV file for seamless upload to the Iowa Department of Education's website, which will ensure that accurate reporting of all ESA eligible students. This starts with creating an enrollment history record. So the Iowa Department of Education reviews student enrollment records before distributing ESA funds, and schools can easily generate an enrollment history record complete with essential details by adding students using the new student wizard. So the new student wizard is probably something that many non-publics in Iowa already use to add students to their database. But there's a whole second part to the new student wizard that some folks might not pay a whole lot of attention to, because for some it might not be completely applicable, especially for Iowa public or non-public schools that don't necessarily report things regularly to the state of Iowa using SRI. But with this, with the ESA report or the ESA requirements, creating that student enrollment record correctly is going to be of more importance. And it's really simple to do, and I'll kind of show you briefly how to do it, but it involves the new student wizard. Simplify student enrollment using the new student wizard, which guides you through entering vital information like the student demographic information that you most likely already enter, along with the entry dates and the correct course codes and details about the student's resident district and county for a complete enrollment history record. So some of those pieces that the ESA spreadsheet is asking for, like the resident district and county, are included right there on the new student wizard. in the past, you may have kind of breezed through that part of the new student enrollment process, but now if you pay a little bit more attention to that second step in the new student wizard, it'll guide you through everything that you need to have entered for the ESA report. Once you have entered students, maintaining precise attendance records in JMC provides the IDE with evidence of the students receiving ESA funds attending your school. Simply record daily attendance using the attendance or period attendance modules to ensure accurate state reporting. So the other thing that the Iowa Department of Ed wants to know, are the students actually showing up to school? So those attendance modules, whether you use the AM, PM attendance, to manage those attendance records right there in JMC office, or the period attendance module, which I would highly recommend to anybody that's not using this, that allows you to share that responsibility of collecting attendance information with your teachers and then your office staff, and then having them convert records to AM, PM attendance like the state wants. That's a great way to streamline your attendance taking. Many schools already do it, but it's an essential part of this ESA process, which is why I wanted to mention it here. Then it's as simple as marking students as ESA funded, and we'll go into a little bit more depth with how to do this, but designating students as ESA funded recipients on the View Student Data page by automatically incorporating their enrollment and attendance information into the ESA student eligibility file. So on this student data page, we have the state report tab. The state report tab on the View Student Data page includes an ESA funded checkbox for marking students as receiving ESA funds or ESA funds. The IDE is requesting a CSV file from Iowa's non-public schools, which educate students receiving those ESA funds to support accurate fund distribution. So JMC has streamlined this process by gathering all that necessary data and formatting it into a CSV file, simplifying reporting to the state, which then would allow you to upload that CSV file. So currently, if you're not using our innovation, you're going to have to fill this information out by hand. So you'd have to go find the data, you'd have to enter it into this spreadsheet and then upload it to the state. So we are attempting to streamline that process, and it sounds like schools are going to be asked to do this multiple times throughout the year. So if you're doing this 3 times a year, and you're having to fill out this spreadsheet by hand, I can only imagine how long that would take, as opposed to the seconds that it would take to generate this report using this innovation. So the report itself, the process, and we'll go over this in much more depth, involves checking errors. You'll get an error summary report. It'll clearly list the students along with any data that's missing from that file, which might prevent that seamless data share. You can print this summary, fix any errors in JMC, and then continue checking for errors until that report contains all of the necessary information. And then once that report is complete, you'll export that CSV file, that error-free CSV file, for simple upload to the Iowa Department of Ed site. Greg, anything to add or any questions regarding just the high-level view?
No, that was well stated, Jake. And the only thing I can add is that we do have an update coming for January. Would you like me to tell the folks about that right now?
I think if I think I know what you're going to talk about here. If you want to hold that until we get into the actual how-to of the data element that you're going to be talking about, I think it's the free introduced, right? Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. How about we'll chat about that the next section?
Great. Just prompt me, wake me up when you need to.
I will prompt you, Greg, because I don't know anything about that. I just heard about that the other day. So the one thing that I did want to show you from this was the new student wizard. So this is under edit, new student wizard. This is normally how you would enter a new student to your district. So I'm going to new to district, click that new student button, and I'll add my kid. First name, last name, gender, and grade is what the state generally asks for to start. We click save, and then it's going to send us to step 2. And this is where the data elements that are needed for enrollment are going to come from. So we've got, let's say if I have a student that's starting the first day of the school year, I can select the first day of the school year and then the entry code, which is what the state is also asking for. So why are they showing up? They are open enrolled in, let's just say. And then resident county, this would be another element that the state is asking for along with the resident district. The resident district should be your code. The resident county would be where the student lives. Greg, do you have any insight as to the number or where this where schools can find that resident county number that would go in there?
I found it pretty easily just doing a Google search on Iowa county numbers.
Oh, okay, so it's just your Iowa county number. All right. That
yes. There, I think 1 to 99.
Right. Is there anything else from this page? So you've got the entry code, entry type.
You'll need that for SRI reporting. Yes.
Let's just
it's
call
not,
it transfer.
It's not required for ESA funding reporting, but if they're doing SRI reporting, yes, they'll need that entry type in there as well.
Okay. Then we've got the resident district, resident county, and then we'll click save, or I'm sorry, click add, and that will add your student to JMC with the proper enrollment records. So that was kind of just the one thing that I wanted to touch on before you mentioned your second data point, which I think this is going to be coming up in January. So yep. Greg, you want to chat through
that? Just want a reminder that they also want race ethnicity data. So when you're adding the student, make sure you touch that tab as well.
Most of this, I'll throw this in there. Most of this would be collected during online registration. If you have your families do online registration through JMC, whether it be online summer registration or I believe this is collected during new family enrollment too, I think. So
that's a good point. And similarly with the next topic, in this ESA funding eligibility form, as they call it, which is a CSV file in your case that you're uploading, they're going to start requiring information about whether the student qualifies for free or reduced meals. Now that is information you may or may not have collected yet. Well, I don't know, are we planning to do a follow-up webinar on that, Jake, or?
We most certainly are going to have to add to this as the state adds additional requirements, since this is brand new. I would imagine this is something that we're going to probably reboot again, whether it be next fall or sometime later on this winter or spring. So,
okay. But in the meantime, if you've never entered free or reduced lunch information into the software, there is a separate, I imagine we have videos, webinars, resources just for that, correct?
Most definitely. I'll pull one up.
Okay. And so that we can't go too far off into this today because it's not ready. It's something that we'll be putting into a December build at some point so that it's available for you in January. We just found out about it yesterday. Wouldn't you know, we schedule a webinar and then the state of Iowa comes up with an update for it the day before we do the webinar.
It's usually the way that it works, but
yep.
yes, yeah. So Yeah, as the state requests those elements, these are things that we will update as well. And we do have some resources on the online free and reduced meals applications. So that process is kind of a topic for another day, as Greg pointed out. But yeah, we had one question come up from Kelly, maybe more of a statement, but we do not mark students as open enrolled. We use entry code 81 enrolled in a non-public school, which is totally fine. I guess I was using the open enrolled as an example. I guess the important point here is they have to have some sort of an entry code in there. So whatever you use that would be appropriate, that is totally fine.
One more follow-up comment, Jake, in that when we did the original ESA student eligibility form CSV file export, they did indicate that, hey, it's a work in progress. We might see more updates than just the free or reduced lunch. So just to assure you that as we find out about them, we'll code them as quickly as we can and get them out to you so that you'll have them on time for whatever enhanced, what should we call it, enhanced, Jake?
Yeah.
Whatever enhanced reporting options you'll need to do as you work through this ESA funding
2.0. Okay, so all right, according to Kelly, it will err if it's anything other than entry code 81, which I was not aware of. So that must be what the state wants, is entry code 81 for non-public schools. So thank you for that clarification. And that's what you're going to want to select then. So I was unaware of that, but on that new student wizard, the step 2, you'll want to select 81, code 81. So now we're getting into identifying students that are receiving ESA funds in JMC. Very simple process. Students who qualify and attend non-public schools in Iowa could potentially receive funding from the Iowa Department of Education, which will be deposited into an ESA savings account. And this happens outside of JMC currently. The state has their own vendor that they work through to approve students as receiving ESA funds. But once you know that those students are receiving ESA funds, you can mark them in JMC as receiving ESA funds. So within JMC office, you can easily indicate that the student is receiving ESA funding by checking the ESA funded checkbox. Once identified, generating reports in JMC allows you to conveniently access a list of all students in your school who are benefiting from those ESA funds. So in JMC office, you're going to head to the view student data page to identify individual students as receiving those ESA funds. Step 1, enter a student's name in the find field to select the student. Step 2, you'll click that state report tab to edit state reportable elements, including that ESA funded designation. Step 3, you'll place a check mark in the ESA funded checkbox to identify the selected student as receiving the education savings account funding from the state. And then step 4, you'll click the save button to update your changes. So you'll want to do that for each student that is receiving ESA funds. And using the student lists tool, you can quickly view a full list of the students that are in your school that are receiving those ESA funds to better assist you with information requests from the state. So if you are just curious as to who you've already marked or who you haven't maybe marked, the student lists page will show that. So, and I'll show both of those in a live look here coming up. So again, I'm in JMC office. I'm just going to head to the view student data page. So I think I just added my John Price student here. So I'm going to enter that student's name. John's there. I'm going to go all the way over to the right here in the state report tab. And there is a checkbox down here. So most of this stuff is not applicable for ESA funding, but this checkbox right here, ESA funded checkbox is. So we're going to mark that. and then we're going to click save. And that's going to update the student record as receiving ESA funds. So it's simple as that. You can click through each of your kids here to see which one's receiving ESA funds, which one's not. I'm going to mark Sammy as, click save. Maybe mark a couple more here so that when I run this report, you'll see. The second thing that we talked about, if you need to see a list of students that are receiving those ESA funds, we're going to go to attendance student lists. And we're going to generate our own report here. We're going to choose common data, maybe a name and a grade, name, last name, first name. And then we've got the under Iowa, we've got ESA funded. So if you are unfamiliar with the student lists, this is a great feature for running any and all lists of any data that's in JMC. I just wanted to point out those couple. So, you know, you create this list with your student name and grade, but then under the Iowa item, you actually have an ESA funded category now that we can include in this report. And then when you click preview, it's going to show a list of all the students in your range. So I've got all active students, and now I can see easily if they're ESA funded. If they do have a check mark in that checkbox, it's going to be marked with a Y. And if they are not, it's going to be marked with an N for no. So I can see, you know, which students may or may not be receiving ESA funds that are in my school. Greg, anything to add with either of those functions or any questions coming in?
The only thing I can suggest is if they would like more information about using lists in JMC, we have resources for that as well. And if you haven't used it yet, this is a great opportunity to jump in. You can also, if you wish to throttle this list down to just the ESA funded students, you could add selection criteria. Yes, go ahead and add there. And yes, very good. And then just put Y to Y. So it's looking for the range of values that you're looking for. And now this is just a shorter list of only your ESA funded students.
Suppose I could do the same thing with end to end, so I could see
Sure.
just the students that are not ESA funded. So if I had to look and see if I had a student on that list that maybe I feel should be on that list, be another way to do it.
Sure.
Absolutely. Okay, so another question came through here. Do we have to add student enrollment information individually, or is there a CSV file we could create and upload? Okay, so I think understanding your question here is, what's the quickest way to mass add enrollment information for students? So on that add page, the second part of adding a new student with the new student wizard, it was asking for a few different data elements. You know, the enrollment codes being one of those, and the district what's the number? I'm like county. I think the county code. We do have, yeah, resident county. That's what I was looking for. Thank you. The mass change fields, the edit mass change fields would allow you to enter student resident counties and student resident districts in mass. What about the enrollment date? Entry date into the school or entry date into the district? Is that going to give us an enrollment date?
Entry date into the district and entry date into the school do not affect enrollment history. Those are older data elements that still live on the view student data page in the state reporting tab. And similarly, resident district and resident county, I'm trying to think of the usefulness of that for a non-public school, since your kids could be from various counties, various districts, you may or may not find that useful. If you do a mass change for, let's say, a resident county, you're going to want to pick the most common, and you're always going to have the possibility of outliers that don't fit the norm there.
Yep.
The ones that are the exception to the rule, you're still going to have to go in and edit those manually, but you might find some utility there in doing some mass changes. Otherwise, the nature of these data elements is such that you may end up doing at least a moderate amount of manual data entry for this.
Okay, so under this thought, on the view student data page, this stuff would be on the enrollment tab. Is that the, basically the part 2 of the new student wizard is essentially filling in information
Yes.
on that enrollment tab. So
Yeah.
we've got the entry date, we've got the entry code. I think what we were talking about is the resident county and resident district. So this is the resident county is something that can be mass added on that file. I'm sorry, the edit mass change fields page. My thought on this is, like, if I'm a Des Moines private school, for example, most of my students are going to be in Polk County. So, I could find Polk County, I could change the resident, where is it? The resident county to the Polk County value. And then if I had 1 or 2 students that were not Polk County students, I could go in and then individually change those 1 or 2 students, the resident county, manually. So you could do away with a few clicks that way. But is there nothing that would enter mass entry dates and codes?
No, that's part of the add process. Yeah. By default, when you do the add process, it should give you the entry date of the first day of school. But if you're adding them on a different date, then it'll take care of it during that process.
Okay, so the default entry date will be there first day of the school year.
Yes.
Trying to think of what else. Entry code. Is there a default for the entry code as well?
Actually, there is. If they're designated as a non-public school in the school data page, which we set up for them, then by default, it should come up with an 81.
Okay, all right. So I don't know that you'll have to go back and change or update enrollment information for students individually, Kelly. It looks like if you check that enrollment tab, if you see the entry date and if you see the entry code, this should say 81 for most of your students, if not all of your students. The one thing that you might have to change would be the resident county, possibly resident district. You might have to add that. But if you're curious, we've got a report that's going to air out on you if you don't have the specific elements that you're looking for. So it's a beautiful segue to what we're talking about next, actually. So.
And this particular database is not truly configured to be a Iowa non-public. So it does look a little bit different from how it would look for an Iowa non-public.
Sure. Yep.
For example, the default entry code of 81.
Mm-hmm.
I think it also gives a default entry type that makes sense as well.
Yep. Perfect. So now we're on to creating an ESA file. The Iowa Department of Education requires non-public schools to report students that are receiving ESA funding. So what JMC allows you to do is reduce the time and effort spent manually entering this data into the IDE's worksheet by simply exporting an ESA student eligibility file right from JMC. So export a CSV file in just a few clicks containing all required student information for easy upload to the IDE's website, and check this task off your to-do list. In JMC Office, you'll head to Iowa Export ESA Student Eligibility File. to begin creating an error-free ESA file to share with the IDE. I got to stop calling it ESA because I think ESA is a different thing. I think that's the Every Student Succeeds Act. We're talking about ESA. So Iowa export ESA student eligibility file. So step one, enter a date in the capture date field, or simply click the calendar icon to set the date that the IDE is requesting ESA data. I think the first capture date it's going to be defaulted to that first October. So we're already past that first capture date, but we are of the understanding that there might be a couple more capture dates that are going to come down the pike, potentially February, and then one in later on in the year, maybe possibly May. Have you heard anything about that, Greg?
You know, there could be more reporting. I think that's still evolving. I can't really give you anything definite there. They're going to want additional data from time to time. They indicated they wanted some in January because they'll want this new free and reduced lunch added for the January reporting.
Sure.
On that, it's still evolving. We'll find out more as the months go by.
Absolutely. And I think the theory behind creating this capture date was the thought that down the road, potentially, they're going to want this data multiple times. And if we've got students that are coming into the district after this initial October capture date, we need a way to differentiate the students that were enrolled back in October from the students that are enrolled in January, and so on. So if there are additional dates, you might need to change that capture date. So step two in the process, click the check errors button to display a list of any incomplete records of students receiving ESA funds. Fun fact, the summary page will display a complete record of missing data elements that will prevent the student eligibility file from being accurately uploaded to the IDE's site. So for some of you, many of you, this might be your introduction to state reporting in the state of Iowa. Essentially how it works is your data needs to be clean and without error in JMC, which is your data collection point, in order for it to be shared successfully with the state. What we try to do in JMC is make those errors as transparent as possible so you can go ahead and fix them so that data flows freely. So your summary is going to look something like this. You can print this summary for your records, so then you can go and fix any errors that are listed, and then canceling that summary is just going to return you to the previous page. So click that print summary button to print a copy of your errors or save it as a PDF. Click the cancel summary button to return to the previous page. Helpful tip, head to the view student data page to update student records with any missing data indicated on that summary, kind of like what we just talked about a second ago. Step 4, you're going to want to repeat steps 1 and 2 until your student data is error-free to ensure a complete ESA student eligibility file. And then step 5, click that export CSV file button once your data is error-free to create a file for upload to the IDE's website. So let's take a look at creating that ESA student eligibility file. So I'm going to go to Iowa, export ESA student eligibility file. For some folks, non-private schools or non-public schools in Iowa, this might be brand new to you. You might have never been on this page before, and this is something that we have granted to our Iowa non-public users if this is a feature that they want to use in JMC. So if you are currently not seeing the state reporting tab on your JMC site, contact us. I think we're opening it up for everybody this year to try, and then next year you'd have to include it in your package. So you're seeing my summary currently. I'll just cancel that summary to get back to the initial page that you'll probably see here. So I've got my capture date. I click this check errors button. Now it's got a list of errors that I'm receiving. And as Greg mentioned earlier, I'm in a demo database. So some of the errors that you're going to see on here are probably not consistent with a lot of the errors that you might encounter. But in general, it's going to read student's name, state ID is missing. So if I came back to the view student data page, I go to James, and I check the student ID for James. Let's make sure I'm the right kid.
Yep.
I'm missing a
That's the right
state
kid.
ID.
It's in the lower right corner.
So we are on state ID. All right, let's see if I can fill in just a.
Will need to be 10 digits.
Okay.
State IDs are always 10 digits for Iowa.
All right, click save. And now the idea is when I come back and, we'll just look at this first student here. So James Aseth actually has 2 errors. He doesn't have a resident county and he doesn't have a state ID. So if I go back to the view student data page and change his resident county is on the enrollment tab. Edit, and under resident county, I'll just put in there 85, update. And now I should have taken care of both of those errors. So when I run this report again, we should not see James Aseth on there. So cancel, check errors, and voila, James Aseth is gone. So I'm going to want to do the same thing for all students that are on this list, which is why that print summary button is kind of handy. So I don't have to toggle back and forth to this page every time. I can just print the summary, fix all the errors, and then I can come back here, rerun this until that error report sheet is clean. Once that error report sheet is clean, then I can click that export CSV file, and I will have a file that has all of the information that I need to upload to the Iowa Department of Ed. Greg, anything to add?
No. Let's see. Am I muted? No, I'm not. Sometimes the trick is finding that export file. So if you actually click on export CSV file, and then, okay, browsers are getting better and better about it. Used to be we'd have to help people find that, and it does vary a little from browser to browser, but yeah, once it's created, it'll be typically in your downloads folder or wherever your browser is designated to do it. From there, what you'll need is some directions from the Iowa Department of Ed on where you're supposed to upload that information.
So here's kind of a look-see at this file. You can, kind of the nice thing about this is you can see all of the data pieces that the state is collecting or that they're looking at. So each one of them is listed right at the top. You probably won't want to mess with this sheet too much. The idea is you would export it from JMC, and you probably wouldn't even need to open this document. You would just upload it directly to the state's site. There's a lot of things that can happen with formatting and such when you open a CSV file. So avoid that by, just kind of staying out of this CSV file after you've created it. Don't open it in, numbers or power or the Excel, and upload that to the state as you need.
A couple of things about that. You can open it in Excel if you want to look at it, but I strongly encourage you not to save any changes there. If you see something that you want to update that's not in the Excel file, you need to cancel. Don't save the CSV file changes. Come into JMC and edit the student data there and create a new CSV file, because you're going to be submitting this data multiple times during the year. And if you don't fix it in JMC now, you're going to have to fix it every single time you go to export the data again. So again, don't change data in the CSV file, change it in JMC and create a new one.
And then it'll be correct forever. So
yes.
there aren't any other questions, it's as simple as that. That basically wraps it. So getting into JMC news and upcoming events, we round out the month of December with several webinars for you, diving into Minnesota's early education reporting for our Minnesota folks, features of JMC's collaboration tools, working with JMC's Google Classroom integration, and then features of JMC's refreshed new family enrollment portal. So something that we're very excited about here in JMC land is our refreshed new look and feel. So stay up to date with all those new look and feel webinars that show or slowly unveiling the new JMC. Keeping on top of student progress with the student scope right after Christmas. If you'd like to join us while you're on your break, and then utilizing a contact directory and mailing labels in JMC to get you started in the 24 year. Gosh, it's hard to believe that we're already in 2024. Calling all shared superintendents now through March 31st, 2024. If you switch your second district to JMC, you'll get it free. So give our sales team a call at 1-800-524-8182, extension 2, or email it sales@jmcinc.com to learn more. Discover the convenience of our refreshed new family enrollment portal. New families can now easily fill out the online application at their convenience, day or night, without the need to visit the district office for a paper form. Join us alongside the JMC training team on January 17th at 12:30 Central Time for an overview of what's new and improved with the new family enrollment portal. At almost every school, we find an unofficial JMC go-to person. This is the person colleagues contact if you have a quick question about a module. You may hear them sharing JMC tips and tricks with a colleague over lunch. When a JMC training comes up, they're the one that's nominated to go for their school. If that sounds like someone you know, or possibly you, whomever may come to mind, we want to meet them. Why? Well, we've learned along the way that these JMC superstars make the best client services specialists, and we're looking for passionate part-time client services specialists. So submit your resume and cover letter to hr@jmcinc.com, please. As always, we'd love you to be social with us. Check us out on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn @OnlineJMC, or check out our blog at jmcinc.com/news. For Greg Gilman, I'm Jake Vanskoy, thanking you for joining us for this webinar, and we will catch you on the flip side.
Bye all.